The winter of 1944 descended on the Ardennes, a brutal landscape of ice and mud. Arrayed behind him, the armored vehicles of the 37th Tank Battalion stood silent. Ahead loomed an assignment, one every supply officer had already declared impossible. The town of Bastogne stood encircled, its defenders from the 101st Airborne cut off and isolated. General George Patton had vowed to break the siege within 2 days. His own staff, however, projected a minimum of 72 hours. German command, convinced American forces could not penetrate their lines, believed the relief would never materialize. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams checked his timepiece, mounted his armored vehicle, and dismissed all statistical projections. The directive had arrived from Patton's command post half a day prior. The Third Army was to execute a 90-degree pivot northward, pushing towards Bastogne to rescue the trapped airborne troops. Supply chain specialists crunched the figures immediately. 100 miles separated them from the objective, over ground consisting of frozen mud, slick ice, and constricted pathways. Opposing forces, elements of the 5th Panzer Army, maintained entrenched defenses along the entire advance corridor. A dense, icy fog persisted, rendering air support impossible. Conventional armored movement in winter conditions rarely exceeded 20 to 30 miles daily. Their assessment was clear. Reaching Bastogne within the 2-day time frame was unachievable. Patton heard their findings, acknowledged their detailed report, then commanded them to execute the impossible anyway. He assigned the task to the 4th Armored Division, which then delegated it to Creighton Abrams. While General Patton spoke to the press about his improbable schedule, his primary colonel initiated a maneuver that would either secure victory or terminate his military future. Abrams gathered his subordinate officers, outlining the predicament, disregarding conventional military protocol. The perimeter of Bastogne was compromised, and defending paratroopers faced dwindling ammunition supplies. Each passing hour would only increase American losses. Their objective was not a cautious textbook advance. It was to reach the besieged garrison before its collapse. This necessitated discarding all regulations concerning combined arms, infantry support, and systematic progression. Abrams planned precisely that course of action. The M4 Sherman tank carried a specific reputation. It lacked the heaviest armor globally, nor did it possess the most potent armament, yet it boasted a singular attribute unmatched by German Tigers or Panthers. Its reliability was legendary. The Ford GAA engine sustained operations for days without significant servicing. Its suspension system absorbed brutal ground conditions. Mechanical components were straightforward, allowing rapid field repairs. Chrysler engineered the Sherman for sustained operation, not direct tank-on-tank combat. Abrams grasped the implications of this design. The Sherman was not intended to halt and engage German heavy tanks in pre-planned engagements. Its core purpose was continuous motion. By maintaining sufficient speed, German forces would lack the opportunity to construct effective blocking positions against an armored thrust. German reconnaissance indicated American armored units were gathering to the south of the Ardennes salient. Conventional military principles dictated a careful advance, infantry coordination, and secure supply routes before proceeding towards the besieged city. German strategists deployed their units based on these expectations. They fortified critical road intersections with blocking positions. They prepared ambush sites designed to funnel American tanks into lethal kill zones. Their calculations assumed that even an aggressive American push would allow German forces sufficient time to reposition and bolster threatened sectors. This assumption proved incorrect. They had failed to anticipate a commander who disregarded all notions of slowing down. At 0400 hours on December 22, 1944, the 37th Tank Battalion commenced its northward drive under cover of darkness. Conventional armored doctrine mandated waiting for dawn, when visibility would be optimal. Abrams launched his assault before sunrise, knowing German defenders would be at their least prepared. The armored column surged northward at its highest sustainable velocity. No pauses to eliminate bypassed fortifications, no delay for infantry support, no coordination with flanking elements. Only relentless progression towards Bastogne. At 0600 hours, the vanguard tanks encountered the initial German position. Rather than engaging, Abrams commanded his tanks to circumvent it. German defenders, poised for an armored assault, watched American tanks speed past their positions without pause. Before German commanders could comprehend the situation and adjust their defenses, the American column had advanced another 3 miles northward. Chrysler's engineers designed the Sherman for inherent dependability. Abrams was now poised to push that dependability to its absolute limit. The 4GAA engine was rated for continuous operation, assuming routine maintenance schedules. Abrams, however, operated his tanks without interruption. No planned service halts, no engine cooling periods, only relentless forward movement, straining mechanical systems past their engineered limits. Tank commanders relayed reports of overheating engines. Abrams' directive: maintain speed. Drivers noted transmission strain from sustained high-speed travel across difficult ground. His response remained constant: push onward. These tanks were engineered for a 30-mile daily advance under combat conditions. Abrams aimed for 50 miles each day. By midday on the 22nd, the 37th had covered 22 miles. Patton's staff had calculated a mere 12. German intelligence noted American armor moving faster than expected, but misidentified it as a reconnaissance element, not a primary assault force. They shifted units to counter what they anticipated as a conventional armored progression. Abrams' advance was anything but methodical. He executed an armored cavalry charge, tearing through defensive lines established for conventional assaults. Velocity itself transformed into a weapon. German defenders struggled to coordinate responses, for by the time they pinpointed American tank locations, the tanks had already shifted to new sectors. The psychological effect on German defenders was instantaneous. Armored vehicles materialized in impossible locations. American armor bypassed strong points that should have necessitated prolonged engagements, a continuous advance that refused to halt upon encountering opposition. German units reported to higher command, describing American tank forces that appeared to be omnipresent. The reports were accurate. Abrams had dispersed his battalion across several approach routes, sustaining momentum on the path of least opposition, either circumventing or breaking through any German attempts to establish blocking positions. As midnight approached on the 22nd, the tanks radiated heat, glowing red from continuous operation. Engine compartments emitted visible heat in the darkness. Transmission fluid temperatures surpassed normal operating limits. Crews faced profound exhaustion from continuous combat, and the most formidable German defensive sector still lay ahead. Abrams briefly halted his command tank, allowing a quick assessment of the situation. His maintenance officer reported the tanks required rest. Engines demanded cooling periods. Crews desperately needed sleep. Abrams consulted his map, calculating the remaining distance to Bastogne. His order was unequivocal: continue the advance through the night. The next day, December 23rd, the push continued through the icy darkness. German forces attempted to fortify a critical road junction. Abrams' lead company struck it at 0300 hours. The Germans were still deploying. American tanks breached the sector before the defensive line could be fully established. By dawn, the 37th had pushed 40 miles beyond their initial position. They were ahead of schedule. Patton's staff found the reports incredible. German intelligence presumed the distance calculations were erroneous. Abrams, however, maintained precise awareness of his location and the remaining distance. Only 26 miles separated them from Bastogne, with just 24 hours remaining of Patton's 2-day deadline. The doctrine Abrams was dismantling stated that armored units required infantry support to secure seized territory. Abrams had no intention of holding ground. His sole objective was Bastogne. The tanks left behind a trail of disoriented German units, bypassed, severed from command, and unsure whether to maintain positions or withdraw. Some engaged, others retreated. Abrams remained indifferent, so long as they did not impede his advance. Subsequent forces would neutralize the bypassed strong points. The 37th's mission remained singular: reach Bastogne before the paratroopers were overwhelmed. Christmas Eve, December 24th. Weather conditions worsened significantly. Icy fog cut visibility to almost nothing. Air support remained unavailable. German resistance intensified as the 5th Panzer Army recognized the American thrust as a genuine relief column, not merely a probing attack. Abrams' tanks encountered prepared defensive positions that proved impassable. The lead company halted, blocked by anti-tank guns and entrenched panzers. Abrams deployed his entire battalion, concentrated fire on a narrow sector, and broke through within 4 hours. The price: 3 Shermans destroyed, 2 damaged. The gain: another 8 miles northward. Bastogne now lay 18 miles distant. The Germans comprehended Abrams' strategy and redeployed units to impede his advance. The 5th Panzer Army constructed a defensive line, engineered specifically to halt the American relief column. German commanders calculated that even if the Americans reached this line, its reduction would consume days. They deployed their premier remaining armor, massed anti-tank guns, and created killing zones designed to force American tanks into the kind of static engagement where German forces excelled. On Christmas morning, December 25th, Abrams reached this formidable defensive line. He did not engage directly. Instead, he shifted eastward, located a less fortified sector, and penetrated it. The preceding 2 days had been a blur for Abrams' crews, pushing them beyond normal human endurance. 48 hours of uninterrupted combat. Tank commanders snatched 20-minute sleep intervals while drivers kept moving. Loaders wrestled with ammunition, battling profound exhaustion. Drivers navigated through conditions that limited visibility to mere feet ahead of their vehicles. Maintenance crews conducted field repairs on the move, addressing broken track links and damaged systems without halting the column. The tanks themselves performed beyond their design specifications. Engines, destined for failure, continued to function. Transmissions, prone to seizing, maintained operation. Chrysler's inherent reliability in the Sherman was being proven under the most extreme circumstances. The afternoon of December 26, 1944. The 37th Tank Battalion arrived at Bastogne's perimeter. Abrams' own tank, Thunderbolt 7, spearheaded the column that shattered the siege. The paratroopers defending the perimeter saw American tanks approaching from the south, and disbelief spread through their ranks. Patton had promised relief within 2 days. Many had dismissed it as mere propaganda to bolster morale. The time frame appeared utterly impossible. Yet here were tanks, American tanks, led by a colonel who had just covered 100 miles through German defensive lines under conditions that should have rendered such an advance unfeasible. The siege was broken. Bastogne was relieved. Creighton Abrams had surpassed Patton's own timeline by 6 hours. Official after-action reports acknowledged the 37th Tank Battalion's accomplishment, yet struggled to fully account for its execution. The distance traversed, the velocity sustained, the mechanical endurance demonstrated, the German defensive positions circumvented or breached, all these factors surpassed what staff officers had deemed achievable. Abrams' explanation was straightforward. He leveraged the Sherman's inherent speed against a problem universally declared insoluble. The tank was not built for static duels. It was engineered for continuous motion. Therefore, he maintained movement. When German positions obstructed the path, he bypassed them. When weather conditions prevented air support, he attacked regardless. When his tanks demanded maintenance, he drove them until they failed or until Bastogne was reached. A majority endured. Patton visited the 37th after Bastogne's security was established. He surveyed the line of battered tanks, their engine compartments still radiating heat, their crews visibly exhausted. He paused at Thunderbolt 7, fixing his gaze on Creighton Abrams. Then he uttered words that would forever define Abrams' career. "You are the finest tank commander I have ever witnessed." From Patton, the acknowledged master of armored warfare and rapid maneuver, this was the ultimate validation. Abrams had surpassed Patton's timeline by deploying Patton's own philosophy against the challenge. Velocity, aggression, unyielding forward momentum. The Sherman's mechanical dependability rendered it feasible. Abrams' resolve to push that dependability to its absolute limit made it a reality. The irony was profound. Patton himself was renowned for swift armored advances. His reputation rested on velocity and aggressive tactics. Yet when the objective demanded reaching Bastogne faster than logistics deemed possible, it was his subordinate who demonstrated that speed possessed limits that could be surpassed by those willing to disregard conventions. Abrams discarded the manual for cautious armored progression. He disregarded doctrine concerning combined arms coordination. He drove his tanks past their rated specifications. He saved Bastogne by exploiting the Sherman's singular advantage over German heavy tanks, its capacity to maintain operation when all else failed. The colonel surpassed the general's own speed by recognizing the Sherman was not a dueling tank. It was a marathon runner. Creighton Abrams had just completed the fastest armored marathon in history.